Okay, today we're going to talk about playing God on DS9 after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and I have to say this is one of the more intriguing episodes of Deep Space Nine. They introduce a couple of interesting things, a game called Tango that's played down in Quarks, which apparently Jadzia Dax is pretty good at. Also, a Cardassian vole, which is some kind of, well, it looks like a little dragon, but it's actually kind of what mice do in circuitry if you're not careful in certain places. And then Klingon Opera. We have a look at this Klingon restaurant that was fairly new on the station, and the proprietor has an accordion and sings to everybody there in Klingon. And he admits that Jadzia had actually taught him the piece that he was singing. So there is it shows there what kind of community that they have aboard the station, and they do have friends among the Federation. The main mover of the plot is an initiate from Trill called Arjun. Arjun is a young hopeful to be joined as a Trill. As the Trill civilization is explained before, there's about 30,000 for every available symbiote. And so it is a competition as to who is worthy to join with a symbiote. And Dax has already explained that it took quite some time for her to be able to prove herself to be joined. Now, this person is coming to her as kind of the advisor, shall we say. The advisor that Dax had, or rather that Jadzia had, was Curzon Dax. And so it's an interesting way of being able to look more into exactly what it is when you're talking to Dax. Are you talking just to Jadzia with the memories of the other people who have joined? Are you actually talking to Dax with some of Jadzia's personality? It's an interesting way that they finally brought it all together. And we don't really know until the end of the episode exactly what we're really talking about here. I think perhaps Benjamin Sisko understood it more than we've given him credit for heretofore. The initiate, Arjun, is one who is very eager to please, and this is something that is somewhat annoying to Dax, because she says that according to the rules, which are very clear, this has nothing to do with sucking up to your supervisor. It has to do with whether you are worthy to continue on the symbiote species. And so he doesn't seem to understand this. He doesn't seem to have any goals beyond just being joined, and this is something that worries Jadzia. And it brings back some memories of hers, of her advisor being Curzon. And it's only kind of a coincidence that she is then later joined with the Dax symbiote. But she's concerned of being as rough and demanding and borderline abusive that Curzon was when she was the initiate. And while she hasn't really been joined all that long, probably less than a couple of years, she doesn't really feel qualified to really be the advisor to this new initiate. So all of that is kind of on her. Now, the initiate thinks that he's screwed up real bad, and he's in Quark's bar. And this goes to my favorite line of the entire 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. Quark is telling him a story about how he was he was an assistant, intern to the sub Grand Nagus, and was his golden boy and could do no wrong and was destined for the highest echelons of Ferengi business. And then what happened? He says, well, I violated, and we have a new rule of acquisition. He said, I violated Rule 112 of the Rules of Acquisition, never have sex with your boss's sister. "How did you recover?" he's asked. And this is my favorite line in the entire series. Quark says, "Never did. Look at me. Tending bar out here in Wormhole Junction while the big boys fly by me at warp speed." That says everything you want to know about Quark, I think, and a lot about what DS9 really is. It can be a wonderful background for a story, but hardly anybody chose to be there. What is Dax? Dax is a combination of the symbiote and all of the humanoids that have joined with the symbiote. And it, up to now, has been kind of explained as to each new person is their own person, and they just have the memories of all of that. But the fact is that the symbiote is still living inside them. And so sometimes it's symbiote talking, and sometimes it is the host talking. And you never know quite who you're talking to sometimes. And I think that's why Sisko insists on calling Jadzia old man, because sometimes really what he wants to do is to talk to the symbiote, someone who has the inner wisdom that is essentially what and who Dax is. And then the personality on top of that, of course, is Jadzia. Now, she has, of course, a specialty. She is a science officer. She is a very high-end mathematician. She has some abilities, perhaps, that Curzon and Leela and the other hosts did not have. But all of this adds up to the same kind of sub-personality that Dax is. And so sometimes if you let your guard down, Jadzia says, the personality of the symbiote comes through. And so what we see really is kind of, it was said kind of jokingly that Trills are two-faced, and Quark says, just the ones with a worm, or is that all of them? And two-faced is kind of right, because they do have two personalities kind of in a tug of war with each other from time to time. And that's something that a host has to deal with. The memories of all the other hosts plus the personality of the symbiote. So it's an interesting way of explaining what a Trill is. And it only gives a much more interesting look at it in this particular episode. So the plot, I don't care what it was. It was a piece of space seaweed that turned into its own universe, and they had to figure out some way to fix it. And the Cardassian Vols got in the way of that. I mean, that's all fine and dandy. You can see the show and get that. But the underlying stuff, the richness of the writing here, I think is something that makes this a much better than average entry into the Deep Space Nine series. So thank you for listening to my rants here. I hope that you will subscribe if you've not done so. And of course, please stay with us and take in our original series review that comes tomorrow, our Babylon 5 reviews that come on Friday. And of course, if you would click a like, that would make me happy. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, don't go far.